Because I guess if we look at the average person, they let's say they're not really most. Well, it seems like Biden's quite unpopular at the moment, so the average person maybe is struggling. So I guess how do you sort of interlink those dynamics?
Well, I think what you need to look at is what's different about this economy too is the inflation story. So so two things can be true at once. The economy is moving along well. Why? Because 94% of all assets are owned by the top 50% of income. The top 10% of income owns half the assets. Then top 50% of income also account for about 80% of the spending in the US. So they're seeing new highs in their portfolios. They're seeing their home prices go up. They're getting investment income because there's a yield again in the economy. So you add all of that up, and they're doing very well, and they're acting, and that's keeping GDP moving forward. The bottom half, well, in 2019, you could argue the exact same thing happened, but the difference was the bottom half had very low interest rates and they had wage growth above inflation, and inflation was under 2%. So they were kind of moving along with the crowd. They weren't getting rich, but they weren't going backwards. But right now, the bottom half feels like they've gone backwards. They're, cumulative inflation since 2020 is up over 20 to almost 25%. Their wages have only been up about 19%. So on a real basis, they're falling behind. And while 94% of assets are owned by the top 50%, the majority of debt is owned by the bottom 50%. That's the unfortunate reality. The rich have the assets and the poor have all the debt. And because of that strong growth and the high inflation rates, they are seeing higher interest costs. So one man, one vote. Jeff Bezos might spend more money than 10,000 people in the bottom 50%. But when a pollster calls him and asks him who he's going to vote for, he gets one vote. And when he calls somebody from the bottom 50%, they get one vote. So you could both have the economy moving along because the top half is benefiting from interest income, booming markets. They can tolerate the inflation levels, and they're spending. GDP is moving forward, inflation staying sticky. Bottom half can't keep up with inflation, has higher interest costs, and they're expressing their displeasure with the president's low approval rating and why he's running behind his incumbent, or why the incumbent Biden is running behind the challenger Trump in most of the polls, at least through the time that we're recording. So that's how you can have two things be true at once. And again, the difference is in 2019, you could argue we had the same thing, or 2018, but we gave the bottom half 2% or 1.5% inflation and a 2 to 3% raise and virtually nothing on interest rates on all of their borrowing. And that's why they didn't express the displeasure that they're expressing right now.